My name is Frederic Gonzalo. I'm a consultant, a blogger, and a social media expert relating to the travel and hospitality world. So I was asked to come to this event to talk about how social networks, the social platforms, can contribute to a more responsible tourism. So what I did is I spoke of two main things. First of all was the whole, what we call the collaborative economy or the sharing economy, the peer-to-peer movement. Of course, people talk about Airbnb, which is the most famous, which is, you can rent out a part of your house or a room or your whole apartment. But what I was explaining is it's a lot more than just accommodation. It's also car rentals, it's also services, guiding experiences when you get to a place. It's restaurants, for example. Now you have sites in France such as Cookening, where you can invite, you on a website, you say, tonight I'm doing cassoulet and I'm inviting people. So it's connecting locals with people from around the world who are in the town, in the city, to have a dinner with a local. So they're all platforms that hold great potential, but destinations need to be aware, because how do you manage this? How do you manage this versus the traditional hotel, the traditional restaurant, the traditional guided 3-hour tour of a city, when you have all these initiatives being taken by locals and by various people? So that was one element. The other element I presented was also how destinations use social media. For example, Visit Sweden, who every week gives access to its Twitter handle to a different citizen. So it's a much more authentic way of expressing. It's not the country officially saying, this is how we are, this is what we do. It's a local. It's someone from the place experiencing the everyday life. So we're seeing that more and more on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, different destinations such as Tourism Montreal or the City of Quebec. I also gave example on how they've done some initiatives this summer, trying to get the feedback from the locals. Where, if you're from Quebec City, what's the place you like to go? If someone comes from out of town, where would you bring them? What that's different, that's, or even if there's no tourists, you go with your spouse or with friends for a beer, where do you go? So share that information, and afterwards they use that content and they share it with people in Montreal, Toronto, New York, so that when you come to Quebec City, well, geez, I'd like to go where the locals go. And so I think those are all elements that contribute to saying those social platforms, those social media are there as a destination management organization. How will we, or how should we embrace those new realities to share the news, share the information, but also make it more responsible, because the issue came out in the past couple of days of La Rambla, and if everyone goes there, but there's a lot more to Barcelona than La Rambla and Barceloneta. So, but where do you start? So if you connect the local who brings you to those small places. And so that was most of the element that that I tried to present in my conference. With social media today, if you're not walking the talk, you will be called out very fast, because if you're booking on a cruise and you're on the cruise and you're seeing something that is not sustainable, you're going to tweet, you're going to take a picture, and real fast it can go viral. So you need to really be transparent, and if you claim something, make sure you can back it up. I think responsible tourism is everyone's responsibility. That the problem with that is everyone's pointing at someone else's, towards someone else. But at the end of the day, the tourist has a responsibility. When you're able to, you have a certain behavior that you need to have, and it's a responsibility also that if you see something, you take a picture, you share, say, hey, wait a minute, and you address it to the hotel or to the local authority, because sometimes it might not be because it's a bad intention. It's, maybe there was a lack of training with the employee, he didn't know, so okay, we'll address it, and you correct it. That's fine. There's a responsibility as a traveler to do that. But as a hotel as well, you need to train your staff, you need to have corporate policies in place, so there's a responsibility there. And then you have the governments that have that responsibility to take the leadership. We did a field trip 2 days ago in Les Tartites. The example we got there was fabulous, where the local authorities, some people said, too much development at some point, we need to stop it. And we think there's the coastal marshes that need to be kept, and they took this into their hand, they brought it to the government level, and then they got the ball rolling. So to see a change like that is very inspiring. I think some people think of Spain, they think of Benidorm, and yes, that is a model, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all like that and that it's all bad either. I think the social media reality they're starting to understand that whether you're there or not, people are talking about you. People are talking about you and your brand and your destination on blogs, on Facebook, they're taking pictures on Instagram, they're tweeting them. There's boards on Pinterest that talk about, aspirational destinations or destinations to avoid. So now it's basically, I think, destinations and hotel partners and restaurants are realizing this. So they're coming on board and starting to say, okay, what do we do about this? Now, the responsible tourism for me is a layer that it comes within it. It's not something that you do apart. It's not something that says, okay, for responsible tourism, how do we communicate that? It needs to be embedded in the way you do business. I'm fortunate that in my previous job, the one I did just before becoming a consultant, I was vice president of marketing for this development project of almost $300 million, just outside of Quebec City. And this project is the brainchild of Daniel Gauthier, who is the co-founder of the Cirque du Soleil, world famous Cirque du Soleil. And this project essentially was about sustainable development in a small area where there's a ski hill, a mountain. They were building a touristic train and also hotel and accommodation. It was not about how much money can we make with this project, because there are specialists that estimate you could have 10 or 20,000 rooms. He said, what's the minimum we need to have in place to make sure that we have an economic model that sustains through time, that is being embraced by the locals, and that makes sure that it respects the fragile environment that it's in. So in other words, addressing the three pillars of sustainable development. It's the people, it's the economy, and it's the environment. You cannot have one to the detriment of the others. The environment is very important, but if there's no business model, it's not better either. And if the people are not taking advantage of it, or at least the locals embracing it, therefore, I think this is what needs to be addressed, and any business model nowadays in tourism needs to address those three key pillars. I think I work in the social media environment with new technologies. I think they enable this. They don't do it by themselves. Having a Facebook page will never help towards responsible tourism. However, they are tools that allow for a lot more transparency and authenticity in getting the message across, and that holds potential for those companies and tourism brands that do have that conscientiousness of developing responsible tourism products and services. Then they will achieve that, and it will allow them to have a competitive advantage over others who are not, who are doing the old way and who will fall behind. Because I think it takes time, but people, I think, are starting to understand that we have to change some of the ways we're doing, or else, in 10 years from now, how many people can we have in a city? In Barcelona, it was discussed in the past couple of days. You have 20 odd million, 30, 40, 50, 50 million. When does it become too much and you say, wait a minute, there's a certain capacity? And I think we all have those issues in various countries of the world. Barcelona, where we're having the event this year, has it, but I think we're all called by that kind of situation. I am as well in Canada and in Quebec. We just need to make sure that we have the consciousness of it, and when we develop things, we treat it accordingly.